Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am CS the Viking Gamer, and today on Painting Tuesdays we are going to paint Kurdos the Craven King. Today we're going to be using Balthasar Gold, Grey Knights Steel, and Iron Warriors. And for contrasts, we're going to use Skeleton Horde, Basilicanum Grey, Black Templar, Space Wolves Grey, and Griff Charger Grey. And for shades, we're going to use Drakenhof Nightshade, Agrax Earthshade, and Null Oil. And we're going to use a couple of technical paints, Hexwraith Flame and Nighthaunt Gloom. So we're going to start with skulls. Lots and lots of skulls. I got these from the big box of skulls set that you can pick up through Games Workshop. Because this is an undead model and he's part of the Legions of Nagash or the Nighthaunt, I kind of wanted to feed into that, undead, King of Darkness, evil necromancer vibe that he kind of has going on. So I thought that filling the base with skulls would be a really good way to do that. So I layered the base with Vallejo Earth. It's kind of like a paste. When it dries, it's very hard, very solid, and it'll hold the skulls in a lot easier than if I had just super glued them down. So while the paste is still wet, I applied all the skulls to the base, and once it dries, they will be solid in there. Now it does take a little bit of time for the paste to dry, so you have a good chunk of time to work with. I would say from the time that I applied the paste to the time that I finished applying the skulls was about 20 to 30 minutes, and the paste was still very, very pliable. So you've got plenty of time to work with, and by the time the paste is dried, it's about 24 hours. Quick check to make sure I didn't miss any spaces. And once it's dry, we base coat it with Wraithbone and apply a good coating of Skeleton Horde to the entirety of all the skulls. Now this whole process is a little bit time consuming, but the advantage to it is that you don't really have to do much else to the base once it's done. Maybe a wash and that's it. The skulls really speak for themselves in terms of decoration for the base. There are a couple of hard places to reach with the horns here, but eventually I was able to get to them. And having coated the entirety of the base, I realized that they weren't quite dark enough for my taste, so I went back and did a second coating over the whole thing. Just to kind of give them that really aged bone look. Alright, now we're going to start on Kurdos' throne, and we're going to give it a quick coating with Basilicanum Grey. And I use this as a metallic kind of sword color a lot, but I also use it for stonework. Now the way I differentiate the two is with the washes afterwards. So to make it kind of look like stone, I'll use an Agrax Earthshade afterwards. It'll just kind of give it a reddish tint, make it really look like old stone, as opposed to a kind of metallic aged metal. There's a lot of crevices on the throne, and I really wanted to highlight them, so I'm making sure that the paint really penetrates all of these cracks, nooks, and crannies. Alright, and now each of the three ghosts, or each of the three, well, ghosts and Kurdos himself have a upper cloak and a lower cloak. So I'm painting the upper cloak in Black Templar on all three of them. Just to kind of give him that, you know, Death Spectre look. Now, because the cloaks on these other two have kind of holes and tatters on them on the upper cloak, you got to be a little bit cautious to make sure that you don't just start painting areas that you don't want painted. So that way you can go back and do the undercloak in all of these little holes. And now these ghosts on the back of his throne, we're going to paint with the technical paint Nighthaunt Gloom. Gives them that kind of ethereal, ghostly appearance. And this is admittedly another one of those models that parts of it you really should try and paint before you put it together, because the cloaks, the throne, everything would have been a lot easier to paint if I had done parts of it before it was assembled. And we're also going to hit up the kind of ethereal, spectral, ghostly energy that's lifting the throne up with the Nighthaunt Gloom as well. And then we're going to paint the tendrils coming off the back of the throne itself. Giving it that feel that the ghostly energy is what's lifting as well as propelling the throne itself. Now, I'm painting their hands and faces with the Nighthaunt Gloom as well, but later on I decided that this was a little bit too much of this color and ended up removing it. So now for the lower cloaks, we're going to do a similar effect to the flame effects we did on the Scions of the Flame. We're going to paint the upper half of the lower cloak with Space Wolves Gray, and then paint the lower half with Gryph-Charger Gray, and do our best to blend them together while both the paints are still wet. But I'll admit this was a lot harder than it looks because the paints dried very, very quickly, and it made it very challenging to blend them together easily. My best advice for a situation like this is, and I eventually tried it and it seemed to work, is go very heavy with the upper coating. So whatever it is in color that you're going to use first, do a fairly heavy coat of that, so that it stays wet enough for you to blend with the second color. As you can see here, it works a lot better on Kurdos himself. And then we're going to do the same with the flag. And I actually decided that I wanted to go a little bit heavier with the Space Wolves Gray, so I went a second coat over the upper portion of the lower cloaks. And now we're going to use Hexwraith Flame just to kind of touch the tips of the energy coming off the throne. And now for Kurdos' mace, we're going to use Iron Warriors, just to kind of give it that nice contrast. And it'll be a little bit darker than using Lead Belcher, which I thought was kind of good for a almost representation of Death himself. Then we'll hit the Fleur-de-Lis at the top of the staff, and then switch it up to Grey Knight's Steel to do the shaft of his mace, as well as the flagpole and the trumpet. I thought this would be a nice contrasting color to the rest of the model because the Grey Knight's Steel is a little bit more bluish tint compared to all the other steel colors. And I liked it so much that I actually painted the points coming off of his crown with the same color. Again, just to give that nice contrast. And now, for some of the details on the throne, as well as a couple of the models, we're going to use Balthazar Gold. Now, I'm going to use this a little bit sparingly, just really touching up some of the details. I decided to use Balthazar Gold instead of Retributor Armor because it was a kind of older looking color, kind of a diminished look to the goldish color, if that makes any sense. And I thought it would fit the model a little bit better. And then we paint his crown. So I painted over their limbs with Grey Seer and then touched it up with the Drakenhof Nightshade. I think this is a better look for the, well, for lack of a better word, living spirits, as opposed to the ones on the back of the throne. And now we're going to touch up all the skulls on the base with Agrak's Earthshade. This will kind of seal in that worn, aged bone look that I was aiming for. And then we're going to use the Earthshade on the throne. I'm I'm being a little bit heavy with it, but also trying to stay cautious not to hit any of the ghosts or the Nighthaunt gloom, because that would really mess with the color of those other areas. Now that that's done, everything else gets a somewhat light coating, not really a light coating, more of a medium coating with the null oil. Now if you happen to do this and you think that it kind of makes the color blending a little bit too much, I would recommend going over some of the areas with the null oil and other areas with, say, the Drakenhof Nightshade, or perhaps a different wash. Maybe something a little in the blue range would probably help. And here we are with the finished piece. So this is Kurdos the Craven King from the Nighthaunt and Legions of Grief army. I had a lot of fun painting him, and I think I might actually use him as a judge or arborator in my Warcry games. So thank you everyone, hit that like button, subscribe for future content, comment in the comments section, and we will see you in the next one.